All right. Hello. Good evening. Tonight I'm here with Jordan Schouw for the Young Cape, and we are interviewing him about several different aspects of his life because he is an entrepreneur, a musician, and he's a local political activist and community leader. And to start us off, Jordan, would you like to say anything particular before we begin?
Just like to say thank you for having me up here on your channel, Rob. It's good to get my voice out there because I feel like a lot of people need to hear some things, especially the truth.
Yes, that rare commodity. So, I think most importantly, what people might want to know. Let's start off with the more light-hearted things before we get hot and heavy with politics. So you're in the band Venus and the Snake.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, so I had a little listen to you guys before we started this interview, and I was quite impressed. Actually, sort of reminded me of something, but I could hear influences from a lot of sort of 70s kind of hard rock. But there are moments that reminded me a bit of Clutch. Yeah, you like Clutch?
Definitely, and the 70s is my stuff. That's where I'm at.
Because I've noticed there's a lot of that with. There's a lot of that with a lot of South African bands, particularly in the Cape, is for some reason there's a lot of blues influence. There's definitely a lot of that blues flavor.
Yeah. I'm actually glad that you picked that up because blues is the very thing that got me into playing guitar and into rock music for starters. So that's awesome. Yeah, it shows that that my influences are really pulling through well, which is good. And I like with the rest of the band, to be very honest. I mean, there's all of us actually stem from blues in many ways. But speaking for myself, I come from a very strong blues background. So, yeah.
Oh, no, that's great to hear. I mean, I know there have been blues musicians in the Cape going back to the 1970s, but it's mostly at that time, it was mostly in the white community. And I think in the new era, we've seen a lot of crossover, a lot of sort of cross-pollination of different genres and different influences.
Yeah, sure. That's true. That's true.
How did you guys get started? Do you guys know each other from school or not? Because you seem to be of different ages.
Yeah, we're all from different well, the band currently now, the closest person that I've actually known for all my life is my brother. He's the bassist in the band, Kino. And then the rest of the band members are all very new. They've just joined on since last year. But the band has grown. It's been growing for 5 years, actually. But we've only recently been officially recognized as Venus and the Snake for about 1.5 to 2 years, because we've had several name changes and members changing, coming and going. So over the course of that 5-year period, when I was still learning and building, we got to this point now where I decided this is the name of the band. This is the kind of people I want in the band. These are the musicians with the skill levels and the mindset, and there we go.
No, it's good. It's good that you finally settled into a formula, because it seems to work quite well. What I noticed is you managed to maintain actually a fairly consistent sound, even when you're drawing in influences from like Rage Against the Machine. And particularly that song "Blame," I could hear it coming through very crisply. And it's yeah, no. Who wrote the lyrics for that?
That is our vocalist, Saint John Cabot. So he has got very, very strong political ideas and a very strong opinion. Very, very good person. I think that he might even be a good candidate to interview at some point throughout your time.
Really?
He's got a lot to say. Yeah, he's got a lot to say. And the lyrics came from that song, from his political knowledge. And he actually wrote it in the beginning as a reggae song, and it changed up and eventually evolved into what is now known as hard rock. So, yeah.
It makes me think of the Bad Brains transitioning between, well, the other way around, from punk into reggae.
So you know your music, you know your rock music.
Oh no, I was hectically into punk music when I was a young kid. So yeah.
Yeah, then my drummer and yourself would actually have a very good chat. She's full on punk. That's her.
Oh, lekker ding.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh no, that's good to hear. But I mean, politics in South Africa, just considering Blame as a segue, I mean, I think one of the problems that we deal with when you're having a society that is facing systemic problems that are dragging it under, as I think it would be uncontroversial to say South Africa is. A lot of the time, it's about where people place the blame. And having spoken to you a little bit beforehand, you have a remarkably refreshing take on these things, which is that, well, most of us will blame it on some outside group, but I think what I quite enjoyed about your perspective is that you seem to place a lot of the blame on the people themselves, that it's their duty to stand up and do something. Which reflects a very sort of like Joseph de Maistre position, where he says, people get the government they deserve. Would that reflect your perspective, or have I exaggerated a bit?
In a way, I think you're right. In a way, I think, I'd still be more sensitive to the current situation in South Africa, obviously, and I don't even have to ask your opinion on that. Obviously, I know where you stand with your statement. Obviously, it's not that straightforward, but with regards to the government that we currently have, I feel like things could have changed years ago already, and the current situation that we're sitting in right now, we don't deserve it. Nobody deserves it, but our inaction, our inability to stand up, and our ability to constantly accept the failures of our government, hoping that things are going to get better, that is where we should have just drawn a line already and actually made a change. And it's because we didn't stand up that things got this worse. We just kept on accepting the faults that our government kept on producing, and that was it. We hoped that it would get better, but it obviously didn't. So, I mean, who's to blame, really? I mean, obviously, the government is to blame because of what they're doing, but those who can make a change and can actually do something, I feel like it's your responsibility. If you can see there's a problem, then it's your responsibility to fix it. If no one else fixes it, who's going to do it? And then are you going to stand with your hands in your pocket and say, it's your fault? No, it's actually my fault, because I stood there and did nothing when I could have done something.
Oh, yeah, it's like watching those crime videos where you see someone standing there passively with their phone out, and you're just watching some horrible shit happen that could easily have been resolved without even much violence in many cases. Just simply providing a second voice to say, no, this is not acceptable.
Exactly. I feel like the issues that we faced in South Africa, it didn't have to come to this. We could have drawn a line and stopped this the moment money started getting stolen. I think, I mean, I don't know too much about politics and all, because this is still very, very new to me. But I mean, I think the time when I really got introduced into politics and when I really started paying attention was when Jacob Zuma started catching on with these antics. And that's when I started thinking to myself, this isn't how a country should be governed, and this isn't who should be governing our country in the first place. And already there, when us South Africans saw that, we should have stopped and we should have said, right, enough is enough, done. But no, we kept on waiting and hoping it's going to get better. Obviously, there was a lot of lying that went on, and they did it very well. So they blindsided us big time, but it's okay. We're going to make up for that, definitely.
There's one big thing that I notice when people start discussing politics in South Africa, particularly when Jacob Zuma comes out, is that people will blame the rot of the ANC on just Jacob Zuma. And it seems to me that the predominant theme in discussing politics in South Africa seems to be there seems to be two modes, where we have purely people who sit with an identity perspective, and then people who sit with a rotten apple perspective. So it's just a few rotten apples. If we weed them out, everything will be fine. And then the bickering about identity, which is a stalemate because everyone has entrenched positions along that matter. Do you personally see a way out of that deadlock?
There's always a way out of anything, everything.
Yeah, personally, I have a predilection for more ideological sort of critiques. In your own circles amongst people that you're organizing with, What would you say? What would you say are the predominant sort of ideas about what the root causes of our problems are?
That's a very big question, actually, because there's no straight answer. There's no single. Well, to be honest with you, I'll be saying things which have already been heard before. It's obviously racism. It's the corruption. It's the greed. It stems from something that was. It's also hate. Definitely hate. Racial hate, and those are things that stemmed from years ago already. Before I was even born, these things were already in place, and they just grew exponentially over time. So there's a lot that can be said. I don't feel like I'm entitled to say much about it because I didn't really experience much of apartheid, and I feel like a lot of the issues were were sort of circulating around during that time, and it built up to now, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. But you grew up in Manenberg, from what I understand, and there will be because of. Oh, you say Bontehevel. I'm afraid. Oh, sorry. But that part of the city will have a very, very strong memory about apartheid because they're most directly affected by the displacement from District 6.
Definitely.
So, I mean, how is that memory sort of affecting ordinary people these days? Because you hear a lot of sort of very fixed and repetitive narratives amongst academic circles, but you don't often hear about perspectives on the ground. What would you say is the what are the sort of big prevailing themes? How are people sort of living with those historical memories at this point in time?
That is something that I can't answer because I was not exposed to apartheid. I'm a product of it.
Product of it.
Yeah, I was born during that time, during that era, and I never really got to experience the most of it. So my family, parents and grandparents, they would tell me stories of it, very short stories of how they would run from police and such, but that is it. So, for me, to be very honest with you, I don't tend to look back and try to draw any information from the past. I'm constantly looking to what we have now and what we can do for the future and how we can move forward. So, I mean, I don't have a very strong opinion on that. Just, in case you'd have any other questions regarding.
So it's much more of a pragmatic approach to politics. How do you fix what you have at the moment, rather than looking at how the past defines us?
Yeah, that's exactly how I am personally as well, and I'm applying that to the things that I'm doing, and I'm hoping that my voice can help other people to at least also change their viewpoints and the way they tackle the issues we've got in our country, because there's a lot of blaming going on and everybody's looking to the past, but we need to look in front of us at least.
Oh dear, the signal is giving us trouble again.
Yeah, I can see your
I don't know where. Oh, there you are. I'm afraid the signal sort of gave me a bit of jibber. I don't know if it was my end or your end. Hopefully not mine. But anyway, you studied engineering, right? You studied, was it mechanical engineering? Do you think? Yeah. So do you think that sort of impacted your sort of more practical mindset, pragmatic mindset with regards to politics? I mean, I know my father being a chemical engineer, I know sort of he's got a much more sort of matter-of-fact approach to things.
I think it's just an engineer's trait here. I've always had that view to things since I was a child. I think it came way before studying engineering, definitely. I've known this.
You're making me think of. Do you ever see? There was a cartoon a while back of Dilbert. They made an animated series of Dilbert.
Sounds familiar, and I don't know too much about animated cartoons, but I mean, you can continue.
Yeah, no, there was a little scene in it. I mean, I haven't seen many episodes or anything like that, but I caught this bit where, so Dilbert's like a little boy, and he goes into the mother takes him into the doctor to be examined, and it's like, well, he's a very weird boy, and what's wrong with him? And the doctor sort of tests him, and he seems perfectly fine. And then while there's chatting to his mother, the boy goes off and just sort of like tinkers with this machine in the corner and fixes it. And the doctor says, well, I'll be, that thing's been busted for 6 months, and then he says, I was like, my God. And she says, She says, I'm afraid this is very serious. And so the mother turns to the doctor and says, why, what's the matter? And he says, I'm afraid he'll be an engineer.
Yeah, you have to be afraid. You have to be afraid. You know how many things I've dismantled in this house? Yes, and my brothers are like, he started catching on similar traits, and he does the same, just taking things apart.
Yeah.
It's very good. Very good. I got nothing against it. I'm actually very happy and grateful for that.
No, I mean, one of the things that we're sorely lacking in South Africa, I think, is sort of people who have that approach to things. Everyone's been taught to wallow in their circumstances. I think to some degree, even myself. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the skill shortages. How do you find the competition where you are at the moment? Because you've decided to go into starting your own business rather than working for the public or private sector. How did that come about?
How I started my business, or why I decided?
Yeah, well, both. But let's start with how you decided.
How I decided was mainly because I didn't want to work for a company, and that's also the main reason why I stopped studying. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to start my business, because I've had this idea since I was probably 15, 16 years old. Always wanted to start my business, and I didn't know what, but I knew I wanted to do something. And eventually the day came where I knew that I've got skills in engineering. I can weld, I can build things with my hands, and that's what I love doing. So I decided, let me start a business and start with a skill that I have, which can make me money from starters, and that was welding. And then from there, I started developing more skills and developing my business as time went by. But the main reason why I did it was because I enjoy the freedom to decide for myself what I want to do. I love having control over the things that I've got around me. And I mean, I enjoy working for people as well, don't get me wrong, but that's not how I want to spend my life. Not that there's anything wrong with it either. It's great. Whatever floats anyone's boat.
Oh yes, I think the idea that we need to look for jobs first and foremost is a very sort of sad sort of social sickness that we have in South Africa, where everyone's hoping that someone else will help them out. Always looking for solutions from outside. Always hoping for fixes. And you know, as you discuss, as you mentioned, as we mentioned with the issue of politics and political activism, it's very much a case of one has to get off one's ass and start a bit of motion oneself.
Exactly. It's as simple as that, really. There's no two ways about it. You just got to get up and you got to start doing.
Absolutely. Now you've started. Obviously, you're running a business in a country which has extensive laws against racial discrimination and so on. How have those proved to be a particularly big obstacle for your business, or?
Definitely not for me, at least. I know a lot of other people have experienced some issues, but not for myself. It's been very straightforward for me. Just started my business, registered, got all the documents, everything I needed. There we go. And business was just free flowing. Everything that I've experienced was dependent on my knowledge of business, and whether I failed or lost is all up to me. Never really experienced any racial issues where business is concerned.
Okay, so the bureaucracy is mostly fine. You're not having any particular obstacles due to the BEE system.
No, not for me at least. And speaking of BEE, I've actually torn up my certificate, made a nice video about it, encouraging people to do the same. And I do not support BEE at all anymore. For me, BEE actually supported me a lot, I feel, because obviously when you do tenders as a business person with your company, you get preference based on your BEE level. And I've got 100% BEE level, and it was great for the time being. But now that I see how the country is being run and what BEE is really for, I just decided that, you know what, I don't support this, so I tore it up and I'm done with it. Anyone else who still supports needs to really consider why they have this thing in place. It's not necessary. It really does more harm than good, actually.
I think that's very admirable. There's not a lot of people who have taken that particular position. I mean, I think, as we well know, in the old days, in the bad old days, there weren't a hell of a lot of white people who, how should I put it, made any particularly large sacrifices in the name of principle. I think we know, we've all met people who did a little something during the struggle. We've all met them because they'll advertise it every time they open their mouths. But I think most of the time it's a rather underwhelming effort, and I think it's uncommon to meet people who have made even as much of a sacrifice as you have, which might put you in trouble with regulators. Do you expect much blowback on that front?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. There's always consequences for any actions, negative and positive. So I really don't care about the negative consequences. I'm going to possibly lose some business here and there, but I really don't support BEE for many reasons, and it outweighs the negative consequences that can come my way. So be it what it may be, yeah.
I think everyone realizes that BEE is probably not going to go away so long as South Africa has the political culture that it has,
and as long as its business owners still support it. And once more people like myself start tearing up the certificates and just publicly, wash their hands clean from that, I think BEE would actually collapse, because then the massive companies that take on subcontractors like myself, they would not use that to judge you and hire you, because that's one of their recommendations, that you have BE rated on such and such. So once they start adopting this idea of no BE, I think it will be much better for the entire country as well.
I see. I suspect, however, that as you say, a lot of the large companies are supporting BEE. They have to survive, gun to their head.
Yeah.
So a lot the resistance obviously won't come from sort of the major corporate private sector. Do you think that there's much chance of this turning around without a movement like Cape Independence? Because I know that you're quite a vocal supporter of Cape Independence.
Definitely, because change in this country is inevitable. Whether I stand out there and make my voice heard or not, it's going to make a difference to some people. But in the whole scheme of things, there's a lot more that's going to happen. And the change that we want to see is going to come our way. It's definitely going to come our way. It's just it takes people like us to stand up and actually push so we can make it faster. We need to have that happen much faster, because we don't have the time, to be honest. People are literally dying each and every single day. And the longer we sit on our asses, the more innocent people die. So if we want to really fix things, we got to step up our game and take action fast. And that applies to everyone in this country who has got a voice that can be heard. Whether it's a big company, a big industry company that has got BEE supporters, or if they support BEE, I mean, they need to strip themselves clean of that, because that will be a very big step forward for our country, their contribution to that. And once everyone else in this country starts adopting this mentality of fixing things, obviously you got to have morals, you got to have principles, you got to understand what's right and wrong. Just because the government says you must do it doesn't mean it's right. Once people start standing up and start realizing that, things are going to change. And that's the thing. It's already happening right now. So I've got no worries about where we're going in the future.
You say that the train's in motion, so to speak.
Yeah, long time ago.
So how do you see the chances of you ending up in any kind of new political organization on the ground that we'll be seeing soon by name?
Yeah, I wouldn't join any political groups, because politics is a dirty game. anybody can go into that with good intentions, but things can easily get twisted. And it's not to say that I'm afraid of that happening to myself, because I know who I am. It will never ever happen. But I don't lay with dogs who've got fleas, and politicians
yes.
are very much like that. So if I were to get into politics full force and have a political party, I'd much rather start my own and build it up from the ground.
Very sound. So I take it then that you would be much more in support of very local parties, very sort of, local municipal level representation over the sort of big picture, sort of big money stuff that tends to happen at a national level.
Definitely.
And what would then for you be the primary issues that are affecting the area that you're living in at the moment?
Definitely the homelessness. I want to get rid of poverty. That's the first point. And obviously, there's a lot of big issues, and a lot of it it takes a lot of thought. Actually, I can't give you a straight answer on that, but definitely starting with the poverty. I feel like that is one of the easiest things that we could have fixed a long time ago, because all it takes is someone who cares, a government who cares, and they take the finances that they're earning and they pump it into the right place. That's all it takes. So I would start there.
Awesome. Well, a lot of it, I think we can understand, comes from lack of opportunity and lack of education. But you picked up on the homeless issue, and I thought that was very, very interesting, because that's one thing that for me stands out a lot about Cape Town is homeless people, almost all of whom will be drug addicts or people with some kind of mental illness. Of course, those are two things which are strictly linked. The mentally ill will chase drugs, and the drug users will become mentally ill. And I think that strikes me as a very, very big issue in the Cape, not just in Cape Town itself, but sort of more widely, is drug abuse. Do you find that you differ with a lot of people in the music industry on that sort of point? Because I know that musicians, particularly in the Cape, tend to be quite libertine in their leanings.
Yeah, definitely. I would separate myself big time. I can only speak for myself on this point, obviously.
Yes.
I wouldn't say all musicians. I've met a lot of good ones, actually, that are very up against it. But you do have a point. You have a very good point as well, that drugs is a big influence on homelessness as well.
Okay. Where do you think you'd see yourself fitting in then? So you'd see yourself particularly in the Cape Independence movement. You see yourself more around organizing things like local self-defense, sort of neighborhood protection units, those kinds of things. I know we've chatted briefly off air. Are there any details around that you'd care to share, or
nothing that I would share right now? That is something more closed, but definitely going on. I can say for a fact that our neighborhoods are definitely going to start rounding up and supporting each other in terms of safety. And the same should happen on massive community levels, where all of our people start standing together, because we can't rely on our police anymore. So we need to start not taking the law into our own hands, but we have to start protecting ourselves and each other. That is what we...
looking out for the neighbors.
Yeah, look, not just for the neighbors, but for everyone. When you go out into the street, you need to have this idea in your mind that if something bad happens to a stranger whom you don't know, you can't rely on the police to take care of the situation. You got to be the responsible person and actually help the victim in whichever way you can, and make sure that the right outcome is achieved at all times. And it applies for everybody. I feel like once we've got this kind of mentality of helping each other, looking out for each other, instead of constantly trying to save our own backs every time, we can actually start in like really, really making change on a massive level.
There's a very strong duty to care, duty to participate.
You must, because if you don't care, everyone else will also start developing that mindset, because they look at you and you just say, and you don't care. You outrightly show them that you don't care. They'll think to themselves, well, I don't care either. And then it just continues from person to person, and so it goes on. But if you obviously
Normalization.
yeah, and it's quick. It's easy when it's a negative situation. People react to that very, very well. But when it comes to positivity, that's what you got to be spreading all the time. That works.
Positivity. I like that very much. Pessimism and positivity. That's very much how I look at things.
Yeah, you have to have a balance, of course. It's definitely, I mean, that's where the realism comes in. So you got to have a balance.
Yeah, we were talking about this before the break, that a lot of the colored mindset in the Cape tends to be a bit tends towards pessimism a lot, and that's a double-edged sword, because it can bring you in contact with reality, but it can also bring you towards defeatism.
Definitely. I would agree, and that's why people's mindsets need to change. That's why I'm also mobilizing in Cape Flats, especially because I need to give these people the tools that I've been given. And then once they've got that, then they can start asking themselves the right questions, and they can start asking other people better questions so they can get better answers. They'll be able to develop a better mindset towards things and actually see a better future and take part in that, actively take part in making that happen.
Very, very sound. I think that's most of what we've got, what we meant to cover for tonight. Awesome. Is there anything that you'd like to share in particular? Anything that you'd like to sort of plug? Any shows coming up? Any pages you'd like people to visit?
Well, I would like everybody watching this stream right now to please support Cape Independence. Not my group specifically, but Cape Independence as an idea in general, because it's something that we all need in South Africa. I don't know where our supporters are from and who is watching right now, but everybody that's listening, please remember Cape Independence. Please support it. When you see things coming up that actually request your support, go do research, find out who it is that is asking for the support, make sure, and then please lend them a helping hand however you can, be it sharing the news or donating to these groups. It really does make a big difference. And then also a very important message to the people in South Africa, that we all need to start looking out for each other starting from today. It should have been done a long time ago, but I hope that everybody can understand that now and look around you. You can see the results. You can see what happens when you do the opposite. So now let's change. Let's try something different for a change. Let's start helping each other. Let's start looking at each other and then asking, how can we help? How can I help you? And eventually you'll see that everyone else that you meet has actually got more compassion and that they're willing to help you as well. And that way we can start joining our hands, joining forces, and standing up to the real issue. And also, one final thing is to please, please, please help the homeless people in the country. Help the people that you see around you. You think, I know a lot of people look at homeless people and say that, they brought themselves there and it's because of drugs and because of this and that. I can say that honestly because I've had that mindset at one point in my life. But as you grow older and you mature, you realize that nobody really wants to be homeless. Nobody wants to ever be in that position. And unfortunately, circumstances just led them down the wrong path. So when you help these people, it really means a lot. And that little bit of money that you give them, it takes them a long way. So even if you feel like you don't want to give money, buy them food, do something that you can to help. It makes a big difference, big difference. So please take care of each other, look after each other, help each other, be kind, stop the racism in this country, please, because honestly, it's a big problem. You guys should all know that by now. And really start asking better questions. Ask yourselves. For the policemen, for example, policemen, soldiers, everyone, ask yourselves questions. Ask yourself where your orders are coming from and why you're being given these orders. When you as a policeman or a soldier is asked to detain civilians, innocent civilians, or asked to move homeless people from specific spots. Of course, it's your duty, it's your job, but you need to understand what it is that this is doing. You need to think twice about your actions and where your orders are coming from. I'm not asking you to rebel, but I'm asking you to question. It's always good to question, and then think for yourself and decide from there. And that's all I can say for you guys right now.
Well, I think that was a very wholesome message. I'm glad to hear it.
Thank you.
All right. All right, then. Well, good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, everyone. Cheers, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.